Hi everyone, Chris here with Rainbow Guys DIY. Starting the next phase of our kitchen remodel, working on the walls. This wall behind me used to have cabinets. You can see where they were because the tile went right up to them. We are going to knock all this down, and when we retile, we're only going to go standard backsplash height, like 12 inches maybe. Time for some more demo. Alright, I have my oscillating saw here. It's going to help me get a nice clean line straight across. I'm going to put on all my safety gear. Alright, let's get started. Alright, got the walls all torn down. Now I'm going to work on taking out the countertop. These countertops, if you watched our previous video for the door, we found out they were laminated in place. So I have started peeling off the laminate so I can expose the screws that are holding it to the cabinets, since we are reusing the cabinets, trying not to damage them too much. We will end up getting new drawers and door fronts, but for now, want to make sure they look somewhat nice. Then I'm going to take the countertop off. I do need to do some work on that wall below the cabinet. The rest of this I am just going to cut clean across, and then the new piece of drywall will go from here to here. Okay. One of my least favorite things to do, getting under the sink. So I am disconnecting. I've already turned off the water, so now I am disconnecting the water lines. Now that everything's disconnected, I need to unclamp the sink from the countertops. Okay, just lift it right out. Nice and easy. The silicone caulking is very old and obviously not doing its job anymore. So I'm just gonna put this and just start taking out all these screws. Okay, all the screws are out. I'm going to start repairing the drywall now. I'm going to start here, work my way, finish up this wall, then the wall behind me, and then the last wall over there. So let's get to it. There, and right there. Just have a straight edge to draw my lines. Then you take your knife. I'm going to squirt all the way to the edge so we can have a clean break. So just take your time, go nice and slow. You really want to have a nice straight edge on your first pass. When you start to make multiple passes, it will not cut cleanly. So the key is one. I got a little off there. Whoa. So you get one good score line. You snap it. Just take your blade and run it down the back side. I think my blade is a little dull. Okay. So then you just take your blade, run it along the back side, and you are cut. Whoa. I'm going to use a straight edge this time. line up my straight edge, use that as a guide, that way I can get a cleaner cut. Take this, just snap it. Take your blade, run it down the crease, and we have our piece. So when installing drywall, especially over concrete subfloors, you do not want it to go all the way to the floor, because then if the floor ever gets wet, it is going to wick it up. So I have maybe a 3/4 inch gap at the floor, between the floor and the drywall. Just taking some drywall screws. I want to go probably every 8 or so inches along the edges. This is a smaller piece of drywall, so we don't really have any studs running through the middle. But if you were doing a larger piece, you can do them in the middle sections a little further apart. And you want to drive them in till they just barely dimple the paper. So the head is slightly recessed, but does not rip the paper. If you rip the paper, the hold is no longer effective. You gotta put in another screw. Now I need to measure for the outlet. I'm going to use this as my bottom corner, so it's going to end up around here somewhere. And I'm going to measure from let's measure from this side. I do tend to like to cut holes for outlets and switches a little snug and then whittle them away as needed once it's actually time to install them, because you can always take a little bit more away if it's not quite fitting, but you can't add any back. You don't want the opening to be too big around the outlet box, because then your faceplate's not going to cover it. On both this wall and this wall, there will be tile up to that point. So if the drywall does have a bit of a gap, we can fill it in when we tile over it. But I'd rather not have to do that. So we'll just keep it as snug as possible. Safety gear. See if this fits. Make sure your power is off when you're working around outlets like this, especially two in the same box, because if they touch, it will not end well. Need to shave a little bit away. Looks like I just cut my line a bit at an angle. So I'm just going to shave away some on the back side. And I had learned a trick. I don't remember whose YouTube I was watching. They were doing plywood walls, and they actually cut their openings for the outlets. Let's say this is the front side. They cut it at an angle so it was slightly larger on the back side versus the front side. to allow for a little bit of wiggle room, and I thought that was just genius. It applies to drywall as well. Help get everything in the proper place. Now normally you would want to do this in as few sheets as possible, so you can see I have a seam here, there's a seam there, and then one more piece that's going to go up there. This wall is going to be covered from floor to ceiling in tile, so I'm not too worried about joints. Drywall joints are not the most fun thing to deal with. Having to tape them off, get it all level, then texture if you're going to be texturing, but get it to blend away because you don't want to see that seam, obviously. So this wall will be covered in tile, so I'm not too worried about it. This back wall is only going to be tiled up maybe like 12, 16 inches. So this seam is something I'm going to have to deal with. And then any vertical seams, if there are any, I'm going to try to avoid them. I think one full sheet of drywall will reach from wall to wall. All right, moving on. Okay, drywall is all up, and now I'm going to tape the seams. I'm going to take extra care on this wall with these seams. This far wall is going to be tiled floor to ceiling, so those I'm just going to seal it up with a quick skim coat and call it good. Over here I will be texturing the wall so that it matches the existing orange peel down to about here-ish. So I want to make sure this all looks nice and smooth. I like using this mesh tape. It's slightly sticky on one side, so it'll stay in place while you're working with it. And the joint compound seeps through, so it adheres really well. You don't have to worry about getting good adhesion like you do on the backside of paper tape, where you may end up with bubbles or it failing and falling off. So I definitely prefer this myself. So you just put it on. Press it into place slightly. Wherever you need to cut it, you can simply take your putty knife and press it against the wall, pull it at an angle, rips right off. I'm not going to worry about this corner because the tile will come and butt up against it. But this corner, from here down, I do want to make nice and pretty. So this corner I want to make pretty, so I'm going to take a length of the tape. I like to cut it beforehand in a corner. So just rip it to length and fold it in half. And if you just pull it kind of tight, it'll somewhat crease. Press it into the top and the bottom. And then work the middle in. Try to get it as even as possible with the amount on each side, but it is not the end of the world if it is not. You don't want any folds, creases, or bubbles, so if you have them, just you can pull it and keep working with it. That is one nice thing about this tape, because you don't have to apply it with the joint compound. It's not a disastrous mess when you need to reposition it. I want a nice crisp line, so let's use this to get a nice angle in there. And there we go. I have mixed up my mud. Found a smaller bucket, so I'm not making far too much this time. Just gonna use a smaller, probably a 3-inch putty knife. Not really sure how big this is. Use that to kind of glue it on. Then I'll use a larger one to feather it out. So this is a fast setting mud. It's fast set 40. So you generally have about 40 minutes before it starts to be unworkable. So you don't want to make too much, and you want to make it right when you are getting ready to use it. Doesn't need to be perfect, but you are looking for it to be relatively smooth. You definitely don't want any major high spots that you're gonna have to sand off later. Try to avoid those. Don't glob it on too thick on this first coat. I know it's very tempting, just one and done, but it will then dry unevenly and crack, and then you're gonna have to scrape it away, do a ton of sanding, and do it all over again. Trust me, I know. I am not going to cover the holes on this wall. I'm not going to bother, since it will all be covered by tile. I just wanted to tape the seams because that helps with movement over time. And if there's movement under your tiles, it will fail, they will crack, they will pop off, especially on a wall because you have gravity working against you. So I just wanted to make sure that those were nice and taped. All right, that's it for the first coat. Gonna let it cure for a couple hours. It's getting late. So I'm gonna get back to it tomorrow morning, put on another coat, but all in all, looking pretty good. Okay, so I have 3 coats on the wall of plaster. I've got all my screw holes covered. I've got my seams covered. So now it's time to do some sanding. I am going to focus mostly on the top part of the wall. From about here down is going to be the tile. So I am going to sand it to make sure there's no bumps, but that's going to get thin set and tile and all that on there. So I'm going to go ahead and sand. I've got some spots up top where I patched some holes to sand as well, and then we will start spraying. Okay, now that that's all done, I'm gonna go prepare. Ooh, it's dusty in here. So now I'm gonna go mix up my texture. This is what I'm using. It's just a basic wall texture. You want to mix it so it's not quite as thick as if you were troweling it on, because it is gonna go through a spray hopper. So I'm gonna go get some of that mixed up. I don't need a whole lot. I only need to go from here up. The top part is already textured, so I'm just going to be, I mean, this is what, like 18 inches, but then feathering it out to help blend it in. So it's not gonna take that much texture. I'm also doing it on a fine spray, so it goes a little further than if you had it on a heavy spray. Then it just spits out blobs and it runs through it really quick. Over on this wall, I do have to texture it probably 3 inches in, probably less than that, but all the way down to about here, because that is not going to be covered by the tile. And then I will feather it over the corner as well, just to let everything blend in all nicely. So I'm gonna go mix up my texture, and I'll be right back. Got my texture mixed up, my hopper assembled. I have the smallest nozzle installed. This particular hopper came with 3 different sizes. The smallest seems to match our current egg peel the best. Always suggest, if you're getting a new tool you've never used, try out the different nozzles on a scrap piece of wood or even cardboard, so you can hold it up against your wall and see which one looks the most like the original. So I'm going to fill this up, attach it to our air compressor. All you do is pull the trigger, it starts spraying, and you just move fairly quickly back and forth. Probably not going to be a lot of audio while I'm doing it because it is very loud. So I will also be wearing ear protection. So I've already taped off my area. I've got a protective drop cloth on the countertop covering the cabinets. I have the opening to the hallway taped off with plastic. There is overspray from this, so I don't want to make a huge mess everywhere. Hopefully this won't take too long. Oh, I'm going to turn on, I set up a laser level. Just at the height of where the backsplash is going to be, so that I know where to stop as I'm spraying. It's all sprayed. I'm gonna let it dry. There's a couple spots. I think I put it on a little too thick, so it got a little weird with the texture. So once it dries, I'm gonna sand it down, see if that fixes it. If not, I'll come back and spray just those spots. But all in all, I think it looks pretty good. It's easier to see over here where the wall was gray. You can see it better than the raw drywall, just because it kind of blends in a little more there, and I'm sure on camera it's probably even harder to see than in person. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wipe away some of the excess. There's some that got on some tile over there, and then on the ceiling, because I got a little bit more overspray than I was expecting. So I'm just going to wipe it off before it dries so we don't have any issues with it. Okay, so while this dries, I'm going to go ahead and untape everything and move on to some other projects in the kitchen. As soon as it dries, it will be ready for prime and paint. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also be sure to follow us on Instagram at rainbowguysdiy. See you next time.
There we go. Oh, almost died right now.
Don't die.